Of course, the cameras aren't on. It's always something.
Sorry guys, technical difficulties right now with the cameras, but we're getting set up now. Just give us 1 second. Righty. All right. It's all
Anyway.
right.
Oh my.
What happened? Bro, who cares? Just your Kratos. Just put on a red tattoo. Oh my god. Why you were gonna be embarrassed about it.
Oh, my camera's still dead, dude.
For real?
Yeah.
Oh, come on, man. Well, anyways, I guess I'll get started. Welcome, guys, to a new episode of the Co-Op Syndicate. I'm your lovely co-host, Jordan G. Marcos. You're muted. You're muted.
I'm the other co-host, Michael C. Moore. How you guys doing?
And today, we're going to be talking about the PlayStation, all the amazing exclusives that are coming for it, and why it's going to win the console wars. Before we get started, just real quick, so as we get past these technical difficulties, Michael, how was your week? Just tell me real quick how you did.
Been pretty good, bro. I'm back to streaming full time over at twitch.tv/Michael C. Moore. It's been going pretty good. I've been getting, I got a lot better at Call of Duty because I pretty much grinded it for a full work day. That was like yesterday. So that was pretty gnarly. Outside of that, nothing much, man. Just having a lot of fun streaming and all that. How about you?
Hey man, that's pretty good. I myself have been working on my YouTube, as I've been mentioning to you guys here on the podcast, at JG_Mark1 space gaming. I'm currently looking forward to doing a Destiny walkthrough for people who are starting new, so they get their bearings, and also doing a like the challenge that you gave me with doing the hard mode of God of War. Such an amazing game. All right, let's dig into it for today. So here we have the PlayStation 5, right? And this has been a long discussion. I've seen it on Twitter, Twitch, Reddit. Everywhere you go, people are always like, Xbox is better, PlayStation is better. That's besides the point. The point is, let's talk about the business side of it. So in order for something to be successful, a platform to be successful, it has to provide actual content, right? And right now, Xbox is looking like they're going to start bringing on content, but it's not going to be this year. It's probably going to be closer to next year and maybe 2023, when all their new or development companies that they just bought finally start to accumulate time working on their products to be able to release. I know that they have the upcoming Halo Infinite. I know they have Bethesda now, so Starfield's going to be something unique on their end. Hopefully not. I mean, Bethesda's been in a pretty weird spot after Fallout 76, so hopefully Starfield doesn't end up becoming Cyberpunk 2077 2.0 and they end up screwing that up. But on PlayStation, though, we've seen that Jim Ryan, the CEO, has been doubling down on actually doing a lot of games with their developers and really promoting them and helping them out and giving them the resources they need. And he's talking about really amping up release schedules, like producing more games at a time. And maybe, I mean, we're seeing it this year, right? There's like, aside from Destruction All Stars, which wasn't really that great, we're having 5 other exclusives come out, which are the ones that I wanted to talk about today. How do you feel about that?
Well, I think that's honestly going to be pretty interesting. I know I've seen a couple of gameplay videos of some of them that we're going to be talking about later, in particular, Kenna Bridge of Spirits, Returnal. The only thing I think I've seen of God of War Ragnarok is just like, and then like the symbol, and that's it. Like, I don't think they've shown anything else of it. But from the little bit that I know, I'm pretty excited. You're probably gonna have to give me more of the details because you're pretty much the Sony fanboy here. I'm just, just a gamer of all sorts. The only thing I pretty much have been fanboying over is like Smash Brothers for a while now. So I don't know any of the greater details of these games.
Well, man, I mean, I wouldn't put it like that. I mean, sure, I am the fanboy and I am the one who keeps more of an ear to the ground when it comes to news. But I mean, you're a pretty big Sony fan too. A lot of your favorite games end up being Sony exclusives, anyways. I know God of War is one of your favorites. I know you liked you liked the old Metal Gears. You liked a lot of Sony exclusives, Infamous, for example. There's a lot of games that, or at least from the company, you like, and you're also interested in Ghost of Tsushima and Final Fantasy VII. So, nothing much to say about that, except that we're both pretty big fans of the company. To start, I guess I wanted to put out, I think the most, let's say the one that's going to release the closest to us now, probably in like April, would be Returnal. That game seems pretty interesting. It comes from Housemarque, which is a company that focuses a lot on. Well, they actually did Resogun, so they do a lot of the Galaga bullet hell type of shooter games. And what's interesting about this is they're doing a third-person shooter where you can kind of have like a bullet, or it has like a bullet storm feel to it. You're running around, there's like dashing and stuff, kind of like the same speed that you would have in Doom, but in a third person view with a bunch of awesome neon lighting and graphics that they seem to be putting a lot of effort in that. A lot of people seem to be liking it. It seems to be like it might be a surprising hit title, or it might just be like, a one-off thing that's underappreciated, like Ghost of Tsushima went. And it's something that I personally would like to try out. I know I'm definitely looking forward to get it. How did you feel about the trailer when I showed it to you?
In particular for Returnal, I felt like it was a very interesting premise. I don't think I've ever seen something like that where they do like a third-person shooter game that's simultaneously a bullet hell. So in terms of that, that's actually pretty unique. And so what comes with that is that's going to be kind of a concept that's very experimental, in my opinion. This is going to be like, I think this is going to be kind of like us. Obviously, they're trying something new. We're going to get the game and we're going to be trying to see if it actually works or not. I personally thought that it was kind of odd just from watching gameplay. I don't know if I'm necessarily the most excited for it, but what I will say is that I'm going to give the developers kudos for actually doing something, like thinking outside the box and doing something different in a time where, a lot of people a lot of like game companies seem to be trying to find like a formula that makes a lot of money and then just copying each other. The latest wave seems to have been like battle royales with that. And typically the people that you see being more like, or developers that have more ingenuity has typically been indie developers, which I think is a big reason why indie developers have been having such major success lately. Last year, I know at the Game Awards, a bunch of the games that were nominated were indie games, and I know that a bunch of indie games basically dominated the people, like a bunch of different people's top 10s for the best games last year and stuff. So the fact that like this company that has a little bit more of a solid foundation, a little bit more of a, more funds to actually put into the game, it's nice to see them doing something more unique. Personally, for the narrative, I'm not gonna lie, I'm not like that invested in it because it's new characters and everything, but it seems like they're taking it pretty seriously. So if they do a good job of writing it, and they go ahead and make the environments interesting, the characters interesting, and they make good music and stuff like that, I think we might have a pretty solid game on our hands.
Yeah, it's actually pretty interesting that you mentioned indie games of last year, like coming up on the top 10 list and really getting some awards and traction there, especially because a lot of the games that came out last year were troubled. They had glitches and we had a bunch of mishaps. I'm not going to go back into that because we've had like 5 episodes complaining about last year. But one thing I did want to mention is what you said about indie games, and we've had this discussion before where you've actually gotten upset with me because I've disregarded indie games at times due to the fact that they're smaller games. They don't really come out and pop out as much as like God of War would, or it doesn't have that traction. But again, it's what you're mentioning too. It's not the fact that they're just indie games and they're just less quote unquote in quality due to comparing and presentation. It's the fact that you don't have any investment in the characters. Like people haven't. They don't know these new games. They don't know these new companies. It's just people putting themselves out there and hoping to make something that sticks to landing, right? Everyone wants to avoid the becoming a shovelware company and being an actual good company. So it's interesting you mentioned that because, again, Housemarque started off as an indie game company that made just like a Resogun 2.5D game where you're just shooting in various directions like Galaga, but in a 3D setting. For the PS4, it was a launch title back when Sony didn't have too many titles to start with. They started off with a bunch of indie games to kind of make up for the fact that they weren't starting off with many exclusives. That company itself became very popular because of that one game, but now that they're a part of Sony's like repertoire, they've been given the resources to finally make something come out of all their ideas. And this is what Returnal is, where it's grabbing that Resogun formula and then converting it into a new type of idea with 3D shooters, combining that fast-paced Doom action that everyone loves, but also with interesting graphics like neon lighting everywhere and bullet hell mechanics, which I think personally provides a unique thing to the industry, which we don't see nowadays. You know, last week we actually complained a bit, or not last week, the week before, the 2 episodes ago, we were complaining about games that aren't like Chrono Trigger anymore, that they don't go far enough to create like unique worlds. It's all just, we're gonna do the same Viking lore or the same Greek lore or the same Modern Warfare lore. It's always the same thing. So it's kind of interesting that they're doing something unique.
I guess what you're trying to say is that like they're having a different setting and compared to like a lot of what we've been seeing lately, which is true. I see a lot of things are being based in like Norse mythology now, and of course Modern Warfare, both the game and just the aspect of like warfare in the modern day. I guess has been a setting that's been pretty harped on now, on top of like World War II and everything too, which is pretty funny because a lot of people were complaining that we went to the future and they're like, no, go back to the past. So I don't know. I guess different people are just always want something different and want things to change. But enough of that. I guess why don't we talk about the next game that we're going to be having here?
Sure. So again, as I mentioned at the beginning of the podcast, Sony, aside from Destruction All-Stars, Sony has another 5 exclusives coming out. Returnal was just the first one we're going to talk about today. The second one would be Kena Bridge of Spirits, and Kena Bridge of Spirits is actually a pretty interesting game and a pretty unique spot, specifically because it seems to be like a game that is heavily driven by this Pixar art style, which you don't have in gaming at all. I mean, there's some that are similar to it, but no one has fully gotten like, hey, let me grab Pixar and put it into a game and see how we could do with it. So we have that nice, interesting art style. It's very alluring and engaging, and it reminds us of our childhood, but it's also thrown into a completely new world, interactive world. Just that fact alone is pretty interesting to me. They haven't shown any gameplay, but the trailers themselves, well, they showed some, but like the trailers have been mostly about the story and like the graphics. I've been pretty amazed by it.
Well, you know what? To me, what's interesting about Kena Bridge of Spirits is I was looking at it and it straight up just reminded me of like Tak and the Power of Juju. I don't know why. I know that the art direction is pretty different because, like you said, Kena's a lot closer to that Disney like Pixar-ish type of look where it's like a lot more rounded and pleasant. And Tak, I don't know, Tak was kind of like an interesting design. Like I don't know, it looks kind of weird to me. I always thought the cartoon looked kind of ugly or whatever. But what I meant by it is just, I guess let me take a couple steps back. What I'm saying about Kena Bridge of Spirits is that it just seems very much like those old, like those platform games or adventure games of old that we like. You know how when we were talking about our list of top 10 games or franchises that should be brought back, games like Maximo or games like you know, Jack and Daxter and all that we were saying should be brought back. That's pretty much the kind of vibe it's giving me. So personally, I'm pretty excited to see like a next gen sort of game, like a next gen version of those sorts of games in the form of Kenna Bridge of Spirits. That's probably one of them that I'm going to be picking up. And just from what we saw on the trailer, it looked very promising. It looked very promising. The gameplay looked pretty smooth, and the graphics looked pretty nice. Outside of that, I don't really have a whole lot more to say about it. Just that if it's successful, I'm thinking that it might be revitalization of that genre of game. And on top of that, we also have Ratchet and Clank that's coming as well, which I'm sure we're going to be covering later in the video, which is of a similar it's like a similar type of gameplay that, you know, if those two games are successful, then maybe we'll start seeing more of those classic type of games come back, you know.
Right, and there's actually a lot to unpack with Kenna Bridge of Spirits due to a couple of topics I'm going to bring up in a minute, but just to go off of what you're saying, the gameplay seems, a lot of people or at least the developers are trying to present it in a way where it's kind of reminiscent of Zelda, where you have a little bit of exploration and you go around solving puzzles and whatnot. And from what I'm understanding, based off of their description, the levels and the level design is going to be semi-open world, kind of like how Ocarina of Time was, combined with a little bit of like God of War, where it's kind of like you have your main open like walk around area, and then you have everything else is pretty much like linear. You go into different areas and they kind of interconnect, which Tomb Raider also has this too, where you have like one hub area, and then you have the rest of the areas are just straightforward levels that kind of bring you around the world design. So it kind of gives you a little bit of exploration, but also a little bit of action oriented set pieces that you can follow along. But what I wanted to bring up is the creators, Ember Labs, are actually the people who did the original mod or the HD mod for Ocarina of Time in the I think it was the Unreal 4. The one video which I know you shared with me and you've been pretty amazed with as a big Ocarina fan. They were the ones who did that. They were inspired to do that mod, and based off of that, they were inspired to do this game. And through that, they started making all these things based off of what they love about Zelda, because they did the mod for a reason. They love the game, right? Who wouldn't?
Well, I was thinking, isn't the mod for Ocarina of Time done by one person? I thought that his name started with like a Z or something. I didn't know it was a team of people.
No, there's multiple mods. I mean, one of them was Ember Labs. They did one of the mods back in the day that were pretty unique, but they didn't do it as a full game. What they did was that they did a modded movie based off the game to show off like the graphics and stuff. And then, of course, they were, you know, Nintendo with the cease and desist, this and that. If you actually look up Ember Labs now with the Zelda mod, you can actually find it. Now, the other thing I wanted to bring up too is that there are also reports that Ember Labs is in hot water, or has been in hot water for some time, which is actually something that, to me, it kind of sucks, because of course the game looks very promising. We don't have a game like this in the industry at all, and they're already starting off with like, oh, we might not have the finances to make it. Granted, Sony did come in and start feeding them more money, but there hasn't been a state of play for the game, not an actual demo shown off. We don't know much more about the game other than what they originally said last year, and maybe like off a couple articles here and there. But they're slated to release early, you know, in Q2 of, or well, for businesses, it would be Q4 of the fiscal year, which means March through June, like this era. How do you feel about that? Because I personally, I'm pretty worried. I really want the game, and although it's not going to be a fully priced game, I'm still worried. You know, I want the game to be good, so when I buy it, I have something to play.
Well, what I'm thinking about that is, as long as they're honest and they don't pull a CD Projekt Red, they'll be fine. You know, don't lie to us. Let us know what's going on with the game. If you guys are struggling, communicate that. People who like your product, who think it looks good, who think it looks interesting, like, yeah, you might get a couple of toxic people be like, no, you guys better release it now and whatever. But I think good, honest people, if they're wanting to try your product or play your product or whatever anyway, they will wait for it to be ready. So just communicate, be honest. You know, keep that open communication about what's going on with the game. If you're having delays, delay it, but don't release it until it's done. Hopefully they don't cancel it. I know that COVID has been impacting a lot of developers and how they do things. You know, that's actually one of CD Projekt Red's excuses. That was one of their excuses for why Cyberpunk 2077 came out the way it did. So, you know, these are challenges that developers are facing, and it could be very probable that Kenna Bridge of Spirits, or the developers for that game, are facing the same issues themselves. Honestly, I say they just gotta focus, trust in the game, believe that people will want to see it, and hopefully it doesn't get canceled. You know, we saw the same thing happen to Halo, right, on Xbox. That was supposed to be one of the games that launched with the Xbox, and we know how that went. Hopefully, it doesn't end up happening to PlayStation as well.
Yeah, for the most part, Sony seems to have a good grasp as to when it needs to release a game, and really supporting the developers. They've been very adamant about, you know, promoting their games, helping them catch their breath, you know, letting them push out their ideas and stuff. We've seen it with Spider-Man, we've seen it with God of War, we've seen it with The Last of Us, Uncharted, all their games in the PS4 era. Almost all the top tier companies that they have made extremely amazing exclusives. Ember Labs is a new company to them, and as I mentioned to you, they start off as a modding company that was just doing like HD videos using like in-game engines and stuff. I think that Sony would have to, if they are pretty good at coming up and really putting their hands into a developer when they know that the developer might need a little bit more of an assistance, especially with COVID. They've been pretty good about helping out, really spending the resources they need to ensure that games are done well. But I do want to see that, because again, like you said, we want to see the game succeed. I would like to have a franchise like this. It's unique, and honestly, it would be Sony's Mario. People can say Ratchet and Clank, but Ratchet and Clank, I mean, has to compete with what? Zelda? They have to compete with Mario. They have to compete with a bunch of mascots out there, you know? So having them have Kenna would be like a new it could potentially become a new mascot.
I don't know about that, man. The thing about mascots is that, okay, we're starting to drift off a little bit here, but I guess we could talk about it real quick. If you're talking about like PlayStation competing against Nintendo, I think it's not going to be possible for them to do that because of the fact that the characters that Nintendo has, they're like extremely like big time legacy characters, you know. Not only are they iconic and unique in their own way and they're all lovable and stuff, but they've also had like what, 50 years, 40, 50 years to develop the following that they have. I mean, I think Kenna Bridge of Spirits could be really interesting, and the character might be interesting and lovable, and people might enjoy it and stuff, but are you really going to say that it's going to create even competition for Nintendo? I think as far as it goes, mascot-wise, we're not going to ever get anything as memorable on Sony and Xbox compared to what we have on Nintendo. We can only hope, though. I mean, some of the bigger household names, like you start thinking like Ratchet and Clank or like Master Chief for Xbox, right? Like, I mean, you know, I love especially like Master Chief, but I can't say that it gets no Mario or Link. You know what I'm saying? Like, or Samus or none of that.
Well, no, I'm not saying it like that either. I mean, obviously, you can't compete with 30 years of just backing and franchising and all that. I mean, even Sonic's been around almost just as long, and he's popular, but he's not as popular as Mario and Zelda, that's for sure. But he's up there, right? Now, I'm not saying that. Obviously, you can't just compete with a monster like that. But I'm saying is at least to get something, right? We used to have Jack and Daxter. We used to have Sly Cooper. We used to have all these things, and then it just fell through. I mean, Sony wanted to go into like the whole let's make cinematic games idea, which again, it did work out for them, and they were unique for it because they were the only ones doing it. But again, it would be nice to have some pretty nice mascots that are memorable to be more, I guess, like viewer friendly for players and stuff. And also, you know, it's just something nice to have. You know, Sony doesn't have one. I would like for them to have one. Moving on from that, let's get to the next game on our list, which is Horizon Forbidden West. All right, so you didn't play the first game. You should play the first game. If you're complaining about PlayStation, it's on PC. Although some people are saying it's not the best version of it, but you can get it now. And I think I even got it for you for free because I put your account on my PS5, so I was able to get the game free. Horizon is a pretty interesting game. A lot of people really like call back to it as being like a fully open world Ocarina of Time. I'm not saying it is, but it's like you have the whole like bow and arrow survival aspect. You get some items, this and that, but like it's mostly about like you crafting gear, finding the best one, and then, you know, exploring different puzzles, exploring the world, hunting animals and whatnot. I'm saying animals. I'm being kind of, I guess I'm hiding the actual full story of it and like the reason why you're hunting animals and stuff, because I want you to explore for yourself. It's pretty awesome. But the game itself is pretty interesting. It was a hallmark in terms of graphics for the PS4. No one thought it could ever get that good on PS4. That was the first game that really blew it up. Interesting puzzles, nice open world, unique game design, and they're making a sequel that's going to supposedly blow everything out of the water with graphics. Have you seen some trailers of gameplay? Have I ever shown gameplay to you at all?
Well, I've seen gameplay of Horizon Zero Dawn, Horizon Zero Dawn here and there. But I haven't played it myself, of course. That is something that I eventually want to do once I can. Right now, I'm focusing more on multiplayer games. I think I'm going to do single player games for my YouTube channel. But streaming multiplayer games is taking up most of my time now. I think I did, however, see the trailer for the sequel to Horizon Zero Dawn. And I remember it looked interesting, but I didn't really understand what was happening too much. I will say, though, just from what I saw, it does look like an interesting continuation to the first game. And again, graphically, it was a very impactful and powerful. Like, it was graphically, it was just a very beautiful looking game. So if you said that it was actually a landmark for PlayStation in terms of like how it showed how beautiful games could actually look on the PlayStation 4, I'm almost willing to wager that it's going to do the same thing again for the PlayStation 5. You know, when developers really put their focus into something like that, as you could tell that for the Horizon games, like graphics and just aesthetics has been like a big focus. I think they're gonna continue that trend going forward with the sequel, and you can bet it's gonna be a damn good looking game.
All right, that's pretty fair. I do want them to focus a bit more on other biomes because they did have some nice biomes with the forest and like snow, and maybe like a couple slightly deserted areas. But I really want them to focus on other biomes and stuff. And I think this is what Forbidden West is all about. Like they're gonna start focusing on expanding to the west side of the original games area, as well as to really explore the different the different areas of the world that they built, because they built a post-apocalyptic world where, you know, everything got destroyed. I don't want to ruin it for you, but everything pretty much got destroyed, and then like the biomes, like the world's biomes, like the nature and all that got rebuilt, and it's about rediscovering the world through that. Like we're just following nature itself, which I thought was unique. Personally, I did like the first game. I did feel like there was a couple but this happens with any open world game. All Ubisoft games actually, in fact, Ubisoft games are known notoriously for having this problem, which is just, you know, at one point the side quests are going to be just a little monotonous. That's fine. Sometimes the following collectibles at every single location, while big fat map, can be a little monotonous. But it was cool to hunt down the different types of enemies, really craft the high tier armor, and really go through the story. The story isn't something amazing, like it's not God of War or something like it just pops out immediately, but it's something you can get behind. It's something you can get invested into, and definitely something that it will find its way into your heart. I did feel emotionally connected to the story by the end of it, and I actually am going to replay it now because I have to go back and get a couple trophies and do the expansion. I am hoping that Forbidden West follows this and they don't mess it up in any way, shape, or form. The company used to do Killzone, if you didn't know that.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I actually didn't peg that the developers of Horizon to be the ones behind Killzone. I actually didn't have that great of an experience with Killzone. I think I played Killzone 3, which is kind of known for being one of the worst ones, and it just didn't make much of an impression. I forgot what it was that the problem was with that game, but it just wasn't memorable for me. So the fact that they were able to come back with Horizon, and I know that Horizon is actually the favorite game of many of the people who played it on PlayStation 4, it's promising. It looks like the new direction's paying off, and I know that a lot of people have good things to say about Killzone 1 and 2. So the reputation for the developers there, they already got Horizon 1 right. I'm only expecting better things of the second one. Funny note, I wanted to actually mention about what you were saying about the different biomes. It's weird that a lot of people have developers have stepped away from diverse biomes altogether. A lot of times it just seems like a monotonous map. I always say go back to the classic like a Nintendo Entertainment System formula. You know, give us a lava area, a water area, like a snow ice area, whatever, and there you go. You got your bunch of different biomes.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. And again, just like I said at the beginning, we were kind of upset that, you know, companies haven't gotten far to fully realize a game like Chrono Trigger that goes through different worlds and all that stuff. This is again the same conversation. Zelda had what the Mountain Doom. They had I think like a frost area or the water area, the desert area in Ocarina of Time. They had a lot of different areas that you could explore, and it really felt like you were going to the world. Even Jak and Daxter, which is why I get upset to this day that it's like Naughty Dog. Like, come on. the original Jack and Daxters were more open world. Jack and Daxter, the first one, had you start off in the beach and then you start going off into like the forest. Then it's all of a sudden you start going off into like a desert area. Then it's like the snowy mountains. Then you get the last area is like the volcano or something like that, right? And even Jack and Daxter 2 had like the city and a couple different areas within the city you explore. But then Jack and Daxter 3 brought it in with the desert, and then you go between the city and the desert. And you had 2 different areas. But now games are just like one track things, you know. They are making them open world, but it's like, I don't know how to explain it. It's like Black Flag does it best, and even Assassin's Creed. Well, all the new Assassin's Creeds have been doing it. They've been putting different islands and not like necessarily different biomes, but they have like different areas within the same world. But most open world games fall under like one type of biome. Luckily for us, Horizon kind of had a little bit of like different biomes and stuff. And then God of War isn't necessarily open world, but it had different realms with different types of environments. But here's hoping that these companies do grab, you know, their earnings and they really push out and create different things. I know you were upset specifically at God of War, but we'll get to that in a minute. As far as Horizon Forbidden West, I really do hope it comes back kicking hard. And of course, a big fear, now that we mentioned Killzone, a big fear is that Killzone 1 and 2 were the favored. Killzone 3 kind of fell out of its way, and then Killzone 4, no, like some people like it, but it's not necessarily like impactful. Now, Horizon Zero Dawn was amazing and it was impactful, but are they going to follow suit where like the sequels just start getting progressively worse? Like that's what I'm afraid of, you know?
Well, the potential for a franchise to fall off due to the sequels is always there. But you know, I'm 24, and throughout my life, I've seen enough movies and played enough games and seen enough sequels fail to think that at this point corporations get it. So video game developers probably get that if they want to succeed, they have to make sure that if they're gonna make a franchise and they're gonna make a franchise of sequels, that the sequels better not just be up to snuff, as in like, you know, that it better be good enough in comparison to the original game, but to make sure that they basically get the formula that was responsible for what made the first game so good anyways, and then improve upon it, which is typically, to me, that's like the standard that you want to meet to make a good sequel, is make a sequel that's as good as the original and then improve upon it in a unique way. And again, if someone who has nothing to do with game development, I'm just a gamer, you know, I play games and stuff. If I'm able to see it that way and most other people see it that way, I'm sure that the people who actually do this for a living will actually think about it. Now, of course, that's to be said that I know that, you know, every business every business has an administration, right? They have administratives working there, and it's typically the people in higher up management that tend to fuddle things up if they think they know best. When, you know, honestly, it couldn't be further from the truth. So, what I'm trying to say is that I think that Horizon Forbidden West is actually going to be a great addition, as long as the people in upper management don't try to muddy it up with some sort of money-making scheme, which I honestly don't see that as being a possibility, especially considering the fact that those developers never had a history of doing such a thing.
All right, that's pretty fair. And again, they are the creators of the Decima engine, which Kojima used for Death Stranding. So they do know programming. They do have a good skill set at making good graphics and good engine. It just comes down to the execution of the presentation between story and gameplay. Moving on, we have possibly my most anticipated game of the year, God of War Ragnarok. Where's Danilo? I wish Danilo was here so I could say God of War and just, you know, get his pants on fire a bit with that. You know, I love how his blood boils whenever I say war. Anyways, God of War Ragnarok. As I said on Twitter to a couple people I randomly spoke to on a post, do yourself a favor, if you haven't played this game, play it already. Ragnarok is coming, and if you haven't played this game, you don't know what you're in for yet. Like, come on. It's 2021. Play the game. I know I held off. Michael hates me because I held off 2 years from playing it. I finally did. It's time to do it. Ragnarok is coming. Like, let's do this. Well, we got gods to fight.
Dude, honestly, I'm super hyped about it. One of the big things, I mean, I don't want to spoil too much. Okay, so I might say a couple spoilers here and there for the first God of War. So if you haven't played it, you might want to click off real quick and come back later. But you know, one of the things that kind of have me the most excited for Ragnarok, and I don't know if I feel like I feel like maybe they did this on purpose. So I think what happened is that in the first game, obviously, you don't fight really anyone that's that important outside of like Baldur. And I feel like they purposefully put things in the game to make you kind of feel like Odin was going to show up at some point, or definitely Thor was going to show up at some point. Like, you know, that, like, for example, the point where you were going to go get the Blades of Chaos after Atreus gets sick, you start getting on a boat, and then the storm starts coming, and then lightning starts striking everything. I'm like, oh shit, we're about to fight Thor, especially when we were right outside your house, and it was like this perfectly ring-shaped space that was obviously an arena. I was like, oh dude, we're about to get into it. You know, we're about to fight Thor. But lo and behold, it was just an arena for you to fight like random Draugr using your chains of chaos or whatever, or the swords of chaos, and that just was kind of disappointing. What I'm trying to say is that Ragnarok is not only going to be super highly anticipated and awesome because, number one, like, the developers are amazing and the first game was amazing, but number two, just because it's going to be like, obviously the first game was a build up to something greater. It was showing us off what's to come, and I'm very excited for what's to come. I think it's going to be amazing. Like, can you imagine fighting actual gods much in the way that you did for the original games on the PlayStation 3 and the PlayStation 2 and all that, but now with these graphics, with these gameplays, with this mythology, I think it's going to be pretty insane. It's going to be pretty sweet, and I want to see that.
No, of course, and there's definitely a lot to unpack there, because one thing that you actually mentioned, which I understand where you're coming from, but I have a different point of view on it, which is when you mentioned like, oh, going to get the Chaos Blades and then you're in this arena thing, which is actually where you fight Baldur first, which is why the arena was like that. But it's like you were expecting like Thor to come down and just be like Kratos, you know, which I was too. The entire game I was afraid. Like, they built up this lore and this whole like atmosphere where you're literally fearing like, oh snap, what if like one of the bigger gods that are even like more violent and aggressive like comes down and tries to fight Kratos, you know, like in the middle of nowhere. Like, I have my kid here, I'm trying to, you know, throw the ashes on the highest peak of Jotunheim for my wife, and like the entire time you're just like, Odin is the Allfather, and he's killed many gods just to get their power and to just have the knowledge of everything and become the most omnipotent being. And then Thor is like, oh, and Thor uses his Mjolnir hammer to just take down different gods and giants. Mjolnir, I'm sorry. Point is, he's going around and they're building up all this like hype, and then you're afraid, like, dang, what happened? I'm not powerful. I don't have any armor. It's just like my weapons aren't upgraded. Like, man, I don't want to get into a fight right now with those big gods. So when I got to that point, I was like, snap, Atreus is like in a pretty deep spot. If I get into a fight now with one of the gods, he's probably gonna. So I was like really hoping they weren't gonna fall, and of course they didn't, and I got lucky. But it kind of built that atmosphere. I was like afraid that, dang, I just got the Chaos Blades and they might drop right now, right in on me and stop me from saving Atreus. But then they didn't, and then I was like, oh, woo. Great, but then you go into Helheim and you're like, oh snap, I might get stuck here. As soon as you start seeing all the other things, like Kratos getting tormented by his past and like having to fight the gatekeeper and all that. So I mean, sure, they did take a different route, and it would have been nice to see at least Thor show up for a couple minutes, kind of like how in God of War 1 Ares is there. But then again, Ares was the bad guy. I guess in this game it's Baldur. But I understand where you're coming from. I just saw it a different way.
Well, the thing about it is, when you think, okay, let's think back on what's going on there, though, right? God of War was this new, I mean, I can't say it was a new concept really in terms of like gameplay, because it's very much the same like hack and slash beat 'em up stuff. It's just did it in its own unique way, where it was, you know, kind of very aggressive and all that. I will say that it was, I think it's the most memorable entry into like Greek mythology in gaming, definitely. And Kratos became a mascot very much for Sony due to the popularity of it and how well they did the original games and the narratives and stuff. But you have to understand that at the point where God of War 1 came out, this is a game that's trying to prove itself, right? Like this is a game that doesn't have much of a reputation at all. It's a new project. They're trying to think, how can we make it interesting? And they thought, well, how about making you someone who kills gods, right? And, you know, obviously that made an impact on you. You loved the game. You decided to play the rest of them. And that's kind of like the way you think of it. They were thinking, I think back in the day, they were thinking of the game as like a novelty, and how they could make it more of a novelty was you could go and kill Greek gods, whatever. At this point, God of War has already been very established. It's a very popular game, probably one of the most, if not the most popular game on PlayStation. And so they don't have to worry about that anymore. Now you're coming to them. You're begging them for more. At this point, they don't have to throw gods or anything at you to make the game exciting because you know what you're in for. They're a great developer. They make great games. You're just going to enjoy the experience. So my theory is that what they're trying to do is they're taking more of like a build-up approach. Like, I don't know, for example, if you've ever seen Naruto. One of the reasons why the final villain of that show, Madara Uchiha, is so impactful is because of the fact that he's had like the greatest build-up of like any villain in like the history of anything. Like, you know, when you think about it, he starts getting built up like in your subconscious all the way back from like the original Naruto show, which was already like, you know what, like nearly 200 episodes or like 150 episodes or something like that. It was like around in the last like canon season of it where Naruto and Sasuke fight in the final valley. There's a statue of the first Hokage, Hashirama Senju, and then Madara Uchiha. And they don't really mention him, but they show you the statue. And then, like, already from the get-go of Naruto Shippuden, which in itself was, like, what? Like, I don't know, 200, 300 episodes. I don't know how many episodes it is. But it's hundreds of episodes, right? It's a lot of episodes, lots of manga issues. They start talking about, like Sasuke, for example. Oh, Sasuke has the eyes of Madara Uchiha, and Madara Uchiha. Madara Uchiha has, his name is equivalent to power. Like they're hyping him up. And at this point, you know, but if you finished Naruto Shippuden and you started watching like Naruto when it was originally aired, or if you were reading it as a manga, you probably started doing that as a child. And then you didn't finish watching it until you were like in your late teens or like your adulthood already at that point, right? So as a child, you're having all this buildup of, Madara Uchiha is this like badass or whatever. And then ultimately what ends up happening after such a long waiting time, you have this big reveal and he ends up being super powerful and he destroys everyone. And every single time you think you got him, he's like 5 steps ahead of you. I think that's kind of like the same effect they're going for. But for the gods in this case, right? Like Zeus kind of had a little bit of that effect, but I don't think it was necessarily as dramatic because I think, you know, you did like fight with him and interact with him in like or you interact with him in the second one, right? Or you see. Okay.
All right, hold on, because we're getting to. I know where you're getting from, and I'm gonna explain it to you again in the way that you're telling me. So, the thing about the first game, right? Which I'm gonna recap what you're saying is it was impactful to you, and because it was a buildup, which I agree, it was building up to something. The issue with the first game is that the main quest is unleashing or releasing the ashes of Faye over the mountains of Jotunheim, right, into the wild, so that she could live on, you know, spiritually in her home world, right? Because that was the main quest, it kind of had a different payoff, an emotional payoff, rather than a more action payoff that you would see in a Marvel movie. So, for example, in God of War 1, the payoff was fighting Ares, because that was your whole battle, right? In the first God of War, despite the fact that Baldur's there and he's kind of harassing you the entire time, the payoff was to do the quest, which was to get rid of the ashes, or, you know, release them. The payoff in the first game was your actual quest, which was to defeat the god who enslaved you, Ares, who enslaved Kratos as the ghost of Sparta, right? So the payoff is a bit different. It's more action oriented. It's all about vengeance and revenge and all that, because of course Ares caused, in the original game, spoilers again for anyone, he caused Kratos to off his own family. But when you get to the end of the game, which is exactly the same as this God of War, let me tell you, when you beat Ares, the gods are like, you've accomplished your goal. And then Kratos is like, well, are you going to absolve me of my sins? Am I going to be finally safe from my own torment? And they said, no, we can't do any of that. We're not, you know, we can't just remove your own curse, but at least we can make your life a little bit easier and not, like, you know, get in your way and stuff, so you can pursue the rest of your life. Kratos was depressed. He considered committing suicide by jumping off the mount, I think the peaks of Athens, into like the rocks below in the ocean. And then the gods picked him up at the last second. It's like, we have more plans for you. Rise. And then they put him back on the mountain, opened up the portal to Mount Olympus, and then he walks up a long set of stairs all shiny, like, oh, look, it's amazing, it's heaven. You're going up to the thing and you sit on the throne of the God of War and you become the God of War. So with that said, there really wasn't much of an ending there that connected it to the second game. This game did have an impactful second like connection to the sequel because it did the whole Ragnarok setup that will come up in a separate story. But God of War 2 had a different way to set up its sequel. You go through this adventure trying to get revenge on Zeus, and then at the end of the story, when you're about to beat him, he jumps out of the way, somebody else dies in his place, and then you find out that he's your dad. So you turn back time, change fate, grab all the titans of the past, and recreate the great battle, the great battle of the titans versus the gods by having them climb up the mountain. The final scene of God of War 2 is Kratos literally hanging on to Gaia, and it's like, saying like, I've come to get revenge on Mount Olympus, and that's how the game ends, like cut. So it brings it up an even bigger setup to like the big war is going to happen at the end of 3.
I don't think that's necessarily a big setup though. That's literally like, that's just a cliffhanger. Like, that's a different effect. You know what I'm saying? Like, if you, like, let's say, what I'm trying to say is, like, is more along the lines of if the original God of War games were written in a sense that where it was, like, you start in the first one, and from the first one, you already know you're just after Zeus. Like, that's it. Like, that's your main objective, and then you eventually build up to it. That's not really what sounds like it's happening. It sounds like the games all had their own, like, narrative, and then it just turns into eventually like, oh, I'm gonna get all of them, including Zeus being the ultimate one. In this game, it feels like yeah, the main objective of the story is to spread your wife's ashes, and then stuff's happening you to get in the way, but in the background, this sensation or this sentiment that you're going to have to fight all the gods again is being constantly built up, and you see it in everything, right? In the way, and very much in the way. I can tell you, the fact that we both shared the same like feeling about the game without even talking about it, I think most other people got the same feeling, especially because of the way they treated God of War 1, 2, and 3, where it was all about killing on the gods and like, fuck Hermes. Oh, I got Hercules. I'll take your shoes. I'll take whatever. Everyone, like we were expecting that to happen again, but they purposely pulled it back, kept that from happening. They did things that kind of made you think it would happen, like the storms and talking about how Odin's watching us and the gods see everything and being all careful and stuff like that. The fact that you messed with Baldur and then, it was going to get all serious. Like, that's all stuff that's purposely being done to drag you along and eventually build up to those things happening, the name drops and all that. And that's very different from what you got in the first one. The first one's kind of more like, how can I say it? It tried to be very
look. The first game was a revenge story, right? Which I agree with you. And like I said, it was technically disconnected and it could have gone off as its own sequel. But what I find interesting about the first game is that they introduced all these characters to you ahead of time that eventually became your enemies, which you didn't see coming at all. The second game was where Kratos, being so angry at the fact that the gods betrayed him and didn't give him what he wanted, sent him off on a rampage that pissed off the gods and killed him. So you go off on this quest for revenge, but as you go along this quest of revenge, you start seeing that all the gods are starting to get in your way and sending off like little obstacles to get in your way until you finally get to Zeus. And then when you're about to get that payoff, that you're about to get revenge, someone jumps in your way, stops you from doing it, and then tells you that the reason why you can't is because parenthood, right? And in doing so, you feel not only more betrayed that you go so far as to bring back the original quest. Starts off in the second game that the Titans want you to get revenge for them, and they're gonna help you with this quest for revenge. When you fail, you obviously know, okay, the big fight that's gonna come up is the big battle. But the way that they set it up with the cliffhanger is that he goes and grabs all the Titans to build up his army to fight against the gods, which makes the cliffhanger more worthwhile, because a lot of people just say, oh yeah, this cliffhanger just end up being, yeah, there's a second game, but they didn't set it up in a way where it's like, you at least get an idea of what's going to happen, right? In God of War 2, what they did was that they put out literally the trailer to the God of War 3, of course, with the PS2 graphics, literally showing the Titans climbing up the thing, and it zooms in on Kratos saying the famous line, "Zeus, I've returned, and I bring the destruction of Olympus." And then that's literally how God of War 3 starts. The zoom, it pans in again in HD, and it shows Kratos saying the same lines. "Zeus, I've returned," with your funny Mickey Mouse version of Zeus. I'll do it. I'll do it for the podcast. Zeus, I, I've returned and bring the destruction of Olympus.
Can't even do it with a straight face, man. But anyway, just to conclude that, what I'm saying is, I think the build-up, quote unquote, from the original God of War games was more in your face and not very like drawn out. Where here they don't even show you the gods; they just drop their names a couple times, make you think you're gonna run into them, and then you don't. In the other games, it was way more direct. Like literally, how you said, they basically put the third game in the second game, then just waited for the third game, and then you're in the third game. That didn't come close to happening in this one. They don't even show you Odin. They don't tell you anyone directly knows Odin. They barely even mention Thor. You know, like they're just like, oh look, he's on a painted as a stick figure on the wall there. You know, that is more the kind of build up that I'm talking about, which is very similar to the build up that Madara Uchiha received in Naruto. God of War, it was more like, okay, here's your attention, here's your attention, here's your attention, and then like cliffhangers, tying stuff in. Obviously, it's the same developers, so you know they understand how to formulate a story. But even in just how you play this game, it's a lot slower, a lot more like I don't know. I don't want to say methodical. I guess just like they're taking their time with it. With this story, it's not like testosterone filled and all that. It's like more. It feels like more mature. Basically, where before they were good at building hype, now they're even better.
No, I totally agree. And like I said, it all makes sense. This is what makes them so great, that they know what they're doing, right? In the first three games, it was supposed to be this action-oriented game by David Jaffe. Obviously, it went off to different creators, eventually landing on Cory Barlog, which is now creating this more like dramatic, more mature, grounded story, right? But what I'm trying to say is, consider this, right? In the original God of War, Kratos is the ghost of Sparta. He's a Greek Spartan leader who end up going at the mercy of the gods. So he knows the lore back to back. He knows the world. He's explored it. He's hunted in it. It's literally like his home. So of course, there's like it's not. He doesn't. There's no need to nuance it because they have to present it as he knows what he's doing, right? Now, the new God of War series, which is based off of Norse mythology, what's interesting about it? He doesn't know the land. He has to rely on his son to see through his eyes the world. And then that also builds in the nuance that you're talking about, where you start building in this fear of the gods. I don't know their powers. I don't know who they are. And Kratos is a very, he says it throughout the story, study your opponents, always be prepared, this and that. But he technically doesn't have any real knowledge to the extent of their powers. Whereas in the Greek gods, he knew what they were all about. He was like, oh, Zeus farts lightning, and Hermes runs really fast, and Poseidon pisses water, like.
I don't think. I mean, I'm gonna have to stop you there because I'm not gonna say I'm a bigger God of War fan than you. You've definitely take that moniker from me, but my interpretation of the story wasn't that at all. I didn't even see Kratos have fear for a single moment of the gods for himself. The only time I saw fear in him throughout the whole game was just for the safety of Atreus, his own son.
Hold on. Let me correct myself, because now I know where you're coming from real quick. I'm not saying Kratos has fear. I'm saying we as the viewers are like, oh, not necessarily like fear, but we're like, oh snap, like, whoa, these guys are supposedly bigger and badder because they're setting them up a lot better. It's the setup that's doing a lot better. So it's like, you've seen Thor in the movies, and it's like no god in the original God of War series, had a hammer that literally no one could pick up, that could destroy buildings with like the flick of a wrist. There wasn't like an Odin that was like all knowing in the, like, I mean, Zeus, I guess you could say it, and sure, they're all powerful, but the fact that he doesn't know the lore kind of lends to it too, because we're exploring the world through Kratos' eyes. The camera's following him. So like in the first game, the Greek mythology because Kratos knows it, and he even recalls the story. He's like, oh, I know who you are, God, get out of my way, I know you're weak. But when he looks at the stuff, although he's being reserved, calm, and smart, he doesn't technically know the lore, and he has to ask a lot of help from his son, and his son even tells him like some of the abilities that some of the gods have, which of course feeds into the knowledge he has, so he can fight on the spot. So that's actually what I'm trying to say. I don't know if you kind of understand where I'm coming from, but I feel like that shift in tone lends to why the new God of War is so interesting, because it's really showing us a new world, and we're exploring it with Kratos. And then again, the way they're saying the buildup helps out, because we don't know it. We're already thinking like, damn. I'm Kratos the God Killer, but these gods are starting to sound a lot worse. Like I don't remember the other gods being this destructive with their powers. Like this guy's literally going off and killing other races and literally religions. Like that's literally what they say about Odin. That he literally went out and started, attacking the Vanir gods, and he started taking down different realms and stuff and controlling and locking them down. And the original God of War, the gods waged war, but they didn't go out of their way to actively destroy other people.
Well, that makes a lot of sense too. I didn't get that interpretation from it, like in terms of like that this is we're supposed to be having an understanding of, this is so much worse, or these gods are so much like worse or like stronger or whatever. The way that I kind of interpreted it was that Kratos is kind of jaded, obviously, at this point, because he's like thousands of years old or whatever. He's already been through this. He's already killed like the god of gods, at least from what he's like used to. So I don't think he's fearing it necessarily. Although like exploring this idea is a little bit more complicated, because I know that he was seeing like hallucinations of Zeus throughout the game, and that like he was kind of I don't know if he's regretful that he did that. I think he finds it messed up that he killed his own dad. So that's a thing.
Well, he does, because at the end of the game too. I'm sorry to cut you off, but remember the end of the game when he snaps Baldur's like neck and he goes like, "We have to stop the cycle of violence." Like the same story as The Last of Us 2, but with a better payoff, right? That's just my point of view. But anyways, my point is, what I'm trying to say is he stops him. So exactly, you're feeding into it. It's part of the story.
Yeah. What he's not necessarily fearing, but not wanting to do, is to repeat the past. Basically, he doesn't want to send this world also into the shitters by killing everyone, and then him losing everything all over again, and losing the rest of his family, that being his son, and casting the world into darkness, and then killing himself again, and all that. Like he just wants to put an end to it, right? So that you said it yourself. They brought that up, stopping the cycle of violence and all that in the story, and the whole time you do see that Kratos tried to be more of a pacifist. He tried restraining himself more. He didn't want to kill people and get into fights all the time, but it almost seems like he can escape it. But the interesting dynamic is that now he's a father and he has someone else to care for that's not just himself. So I think we got we definitely went on a tangent there, because we were originally just talking about how buildup is an important factor into why this narrative seems to be more like or it seems to build hype better for the next coming game. But it all ties into it.
But okay, to tie it back in, so we can reel it back in, because obviously, I'm very passionate about God of War. You guys will know it's probably my favorite franchise of all time at this point, because of the new God of War. It finally solidified it as the one. And if I was ever stuck with a franchise for the rest of my life, it would be God of War. Like if the only thing I ever had access to was that series or that franchise, done and done. I will forever play that. I'm totally fine playing that game forever. Even if I get bored, I'll come back to it, because it's just that amazing. But my point is, the whole point is, remember, Zeus is Kratos' father. Kronos is Zeus' father. So there's a long line, which I told you the story too, the connection. There's a long line in our history of gods killing their own fathers, Kratos being the latest one, and Atreus being his son, which I was dang, it's starting to look like he might just end up being, and they started kind of like teasing it too, which I was like, dude, there's a lot of foreshadowing. Atreus is like, oh my God, and he starts attacking I think Modi, Modi, like towards the end where he kills him, and I was like, whoa, this is like, at first I was like, he's just being a little scrub, like he's just thinking he's a god. And then when Kratos was like, yo, stop, what the heck are you doing? You're like letting yourself go. He's trying to abuse his powers as a god. And then at the end of the game, again, spoilers real quick, like just 5-second spoiler, he's Loki. Like, bruh, that's literally telling you what's gonna happen. Like, not only in Ragnarok is gonna be a big problem, but even the picture, like when they're looking at the pictures in Jotunheim and trying to see the story of like the giants, and then all of a sudden that one thing, the carpet falls off, and you see Kratos on the floor with Atreus holding on to him. I'm like, that's some pretty big foreshadowing there. Something's gonna happen between Atreus and Kratos. Either they're gonna fight the gods and Kratos is gonna get knocked out and Atreus is gonna be sad, or Atreus is gonna do something. And even Kratos says it too. It's like, why would Baldur? Atreus goes like, why would she? I forget her name though. I think it's Freya, right? Yeah. Why would Freya let Baldur kill her? And then he goes, he only replies by saying, if it meant you live, I would do it too. Even if it's you, as long as you get to live, because it's only something that a parent can understand. I didn't understand too, but when he said it's only something that a parent can understand, I saw through his eyes and I understood it. I was going to dismiss it as, well, this is just trash writing. But then, like, as soon as he said that, I was like, oh yeah, that's right. I'm looking it through the eyes of a parent. And it's true. You don't want to see your kid die. want to see your kid live if you love him, right? So that's all feeding into my expectations. I'm expecting a big payoff with big battles with the gods, a bigger, more explorable world now that they have the next gen technology with SSD and all that, so they can load more assets and stuff. But I'm also expecting better combat, right? The combat was pretty great, but again, I've mentioned this to you. Compared to the original God of War, there's no jumping mechanics. There's no increased combo times. A lot of the hardcore moves that they would have in the original game were based off of 2 power moves that you would have to put on a cooldown. That wasn't how the original game was. You could just go all out using all your powers except for magic. And then, of course, I want to see the exploration improve a bit more, getting more tools. I want to see new weapons. God of War used to have like 3 or 4 weapons at a time, especially with Ascension, where you had like the sword, the spear, and all that stuff. I want to see more. They had a couple here, but I want to see maybe like a 4th weapon or a 5th weapon. And I definitely want them to continue doing the story the way they've been doing it. That whole following the camera thing, one shot, that's my expectation for the game. More customizable executions or something. You know, I remember in the first game, the very first game, you can grab an enemy and you can beat them up to the ground. You can rip them in half. You can grab them and throw them. And then in God of War 3, you can even grab them and run with them and ram it. Something I told you too, right? Where the heavy joggers, you can pick them up and run with them, and then you can throw them. But they didn't animate you running into a wall and crushing their head, which is a God of War 3 animation. Like, it was there. So I want them to grab that, grab this new thing that they have, put it together, and create the best possible thing they could possibly make. Well, that's my take.
Yeah, I think that's my expectations too. And can you imagine how good that game's going to look as well? If the God of War, this new God of War looked already this good on PlayStation 4, imagine with like all the PS5 graphics and stuff, it's going to be pretty amazing. So I'm looking pretty forward to that too.
No, of course. Like I told you, I still can't believe that God of War is a PS4 game. There's no way that game with that level of assets can load that well. I know I told you I had that blip on the PS5, but it was like, again, it was a blip. And as soon as the patch came, I only experienced it that one time, but I'm sure the patch like officially like made everything perfect. And the fact that it holds at 4K at 60 frames the entire way through the game, except for like one scene where it goes down to like 59, like, whoa, watch out, 1 frame drop. And it's only like 1 frame, you know. The entire game is that solid. It speaks to their skills as programmers, their skills as developers, their skills as story writers, their skills as world building, the skill of environment design, game design, everything. So definitely something hardcore to look at. Lastly, you have some final comments you want to put?
No, I was just gonna say I completely agree with you, dude. Good explanation there.
For sure. Lastly, we have the 5th game that is expected. Remember, all these games are all expected to come out. The last expected game to come out is going to be Ratchet and Clank, which I believe has set for a June release date in the summer. Something I'm actually starting to look forward to now. At first, I was considering not buying it because I'm not generally a big Ratchet and Clank fan, but I've been out of the series for far too long, and the fact that it's coming out in June, and it's also, you know, there's not that many exclusives. I was considering buying it.
Oh, I was gonna ask you, man, what's up with not being a Ratchet and Clank fan? You know, it's one of the OG games for Sony. I thought, you know, you would have played it or whatever, especially us missing those types of games, no?
Well, see, here's the thing, right? I know I say it all the time, and I have to dedicate my time to Ratchet and Clank to finally fall in love with it as become part of the franchise. But here's the thing. When I was growing up, my games were Jak and Daxter, Sly Cooper, Mario, and a couple of things. I really didn't know much about Zelda until you lent me your 64 back in 2010, right? Ratchet and Clank, I didn't know much about it until I played the PS3 demo when I first got a PS3. That was one of the first things I downloaded and played. I think it was like a Clank in Time or a Crank in Time or something like that. At the time, I didn't really know much about the series, but when I played it, I know I did like it. And actually, that whole game, I played it to its entirety, and I bought the HD collection for the original trilogy, which I'm going to get back to this year, eventually. I do like the game, and it has sort of like a Darksiders Zelda-y thing, but with space exploration. So there's different planets you go to and different, you know, worlds and this and that, which kind of makes it unique compared to those other games. I just think that it's like it leans more on the Darksiders type of allure rather than the Zelda allure. But again, the same thing is it's the type of game where you grow with the franchise, not necessarily that it has something blow up in your face like God of War, where it brings and captures your attention. Ratchet and Clank is something more where it's like aged wine. You acquired taste. You grow with it, and then it's like, oh, it becomes a part of you because the characters are charismatic, unique, and entertaining, and the gameplay is fun. But what's unique about this is that they're heading it up and marketing it as the end all be all of the PS5's like full SSD capabilities. The whole concept of potentially crossing worlds in split seconds rather than having to go through the spaceship thing or loading screens or whatever, and just being able to just bloop, lift into cast a rift between the world and all that is what's starting to be pretty interesting. And there's also a little bit of time element too there. Apparently at the end of the trailer, Clank goes through time and ends up in the future or like an alternate universe or something, and then like Ratchet doesn't exist anymore. So there's something pretty interesting there.
Yeah, that's actually, I guess they're throwing in a twist, especially if you've been following the franchise from its beginnings. You always expect to have Clank with you at all times. So the fact that, you know, they're changing or they're taking him out, that's like a narrative surprise or whatever. And then also that it goes back to what we were saying that we hoped for Horizon, was that they're introducing a bunch of different like environments and stuff via like traveling through wormholes and different times and all that, which was one of the things that made Chrono Trigger such a unique game. The only thing is, I would say with the type of game that it is, I'm not exactly hoping, or I'm not hopeful that it's gonna be like super like exploration friendly, you know, that it's gonna be these massive open world maps that you get to explore in depth, because that's not what those types of games do. However, I will say that with it being you know, what is it now? 3 gens away from when those types of games used to rule and dominate the space, you know, back on the PS2. Maybe they could surprise us by showing what the hardware is capable of, and now all these maps are going to be super like immersive and exploratory and all that. So who knows? Maybe it's going to throw me for a loop. I will say the game looks super fun. The graphics look beautiful. The only thing that does sorely disappoint me is that, and confuses me really, is that that game only runs at 30 FPS. So I'm wondering why they decided to program it that way, especially if it ends up. I heard you told me something that was at 30.
The demo was at 30, and I was showing it to you to prove my point that if you have a good, solid programming and 30 FPS, it doesn't look as bad as all the crap we've been getting.
Oh, okay. Well, okay, then that's fine. So it's gonna be running at the standard 60 FPS and all that, which is pretty good. But okay, yeah, that's what I was gonna say. Was that I was thinking that with the frame rate, maybe that does lead me to believe that's gonna be these massive maps or whatever. But then I guess I'm just gonna retract that and go back to my position of I don't expect it to be like super immersive in the sense of like how you can explore. But maybe it's gonna definitely be like a fun narrative, a cool story to play through, and you know, just enjoying the characters, enjoy the new characters, and for fans like longtime fans of the series, they'll probably just enjoy the game, especially with the unique time travel and space travel that they're doing.
Well, I wouldn't necessarily go like saying like there isn't going to be much exploration, because again, as a person who has played Ratchet and Clank games, and obviously it's gotten bigger as time went on, they're a lot like it's a lot like Darksiders, but like there's like, okay, you do space travel and you go to different planets and stuff, right? But most of the areas, or at least I'd say like 9 out of 10 of the areas that you go to in each area, is about the size of the big temples of Ocarina of Time. Not like the small like one-off like shrines or whatever you would see in like in Breath of the Wild, but like the big temples of Ocarina of Time, with a little bit of an open area where like there's actual like NPCs in these planets and stores and stuff, and then you get cool gadgets like a zip gun that lets you like swing and launch yourself and stuff. And so there's a lot of tools that you'll see, like for example in a Zelda game, but there's also a lot of tools that are unique to Ratchet and Clank. As far as the exploration, like yeah, not each map on its own probably wouldn't be something as massive as like a Breath of the Wild, obviously, but between the traveling through the different planets, it does make up the full size of a Breath of the Wild game, because of the many different maps and biomes and stuff that you go through exploring with different puzzles and unique things. And now of course with the SSD, the ability to literally warp through the planets, if they even, I don't know if that's exactly how it's going to be, but if they end up letting you warp through the planets, you're essentially in the same map, you're just warping between them.
Yeah, that's going to be pretty interesting to see how they manage to weave that in with the gameplay. Okay, if that's the case, then I am a little bit more hopeful for how the exploration is going to be, because those types of games are great. And I know if you're comparing it to Darksiders, I haven't played Ratchet and Clank myself, but I did enjoy myself at least Darksiders 1. I know that Darksiders 2 and 3 people said were kind of starting to be more like misses and misses, but I'm looking forward to try it, man. And if it could push the SSD capabilities of the PlayStation 5 to its limit, show us how the loading can be incorporated, and do it in a unique way that allows us to explore all these different environments and stuff, and obviously truly make it feel like you're warping from place to place. That'd be great. And I'm interested to see more about the narrative too. I know at the end they introduced that one new character as like basically a female version of Ratchet or whatever. That's, I don't know. We'll see. We'll see what they end up doing with that.
No,
for not use it as fur bait.
Okay, for sure. I 100% agree. Now let's get to the other half of this, which is, of course, why all these things are going to benefit the PlayStation console, right? So again, going back to what I've said in other episodes, and really just looking at it from a business perspective, understanding what businesses are, and I'm learning this in school right now through my business courses, right? The concept or idea of a business and how it's impactful to its market is what it provides. When you look at the PS4 and Xbox generation, right, one of the things that made that era so PlayStation focused and why PlayStation was sold so much is because they literally had the IPs. Xbox only brought out Forza, Gears. I think it was like 1 or 2 Gears games, a couple Forza games, and 1 Halo game. No, if I'm correct, Halo 5. I'm sorry. Whoops. I was about to say something completely wrong. And Halo 5, 1 Halo game, right? You look at PlayStation, they got Infamous, The Last of Us 2, Ghost of Tsushima, Final Fantasy 7, God of War, Horizon, a bunch of indie games, exclusive games from other partners, Persona. I don't even know. Like there was a bunch of games. I can't count them all with my fingers because that's just already too much. Like I'm already going like close to 10 and beyond. That's what the offer is, right? And Netflix, when you go to Netflix, the difference between Netflix that makes it stand out compared to Hulu and everyone else is that they're producing a new show and a movie every single week. Almost every single week, there's something new from Netflix. It's that capability of providing something that's making it so impactful in the market. So the fact that this year Xbox is only looking forward to really releasing Halo and maybe like a Forza game, I haven't been looking at that. And Nintendo hasn't. Everyone's still waiting. Like, where's Breath of the Wild 2? Where's the they're getting Monster Hunter Rise, but it's like, okay, where's like the next Zelda? Where's the next Mario? Where's the next Metro? Where's Metro Prime 4 that you guys mentioned like 3 years ago? Right? Of course, Nintendo is very smart and they delay their games and they make sure it's great. That's why all their games are almost 10 out of 10 every single time without fail. But they're not releasing anything. Sony's going to be releasing 5 games this year, aside from Destruction also. And on top of that, Jim Ryan's mentality towards game design and being a part of the market and really providing for the fans is to release more exclusives as much as possible. And he's doubling down on the concept of making more partner deals, making more exclusives, making smaller exclusives as well to give people bite-sized adventures like Miles Morales, which a lot of people hate, but again, it's not a full-price game. It's deserving of its price. It's an expansion. It's priced adequately for next gen. So with that in mind, I think that's what's going to push PlayStation over the edge, the fact that it's just going to have more and more to offer every year. And I know you've brought this up in discussion. You've told me, Nintendo, they're doing great and all that. I totally agree. But at the end of the day, once it starts kicking through that they have all these IPs, that's what's going to make the business flourish. And that's what I think is going to make the console the best.
Hard disagree. So already, okay, so I know that the title does say that, PlayStation 5 is the best console. But, on many fronts, I'm going to have to disagree with you. I'd have to say where. When I say where, what I'm saying is, it's not the best console hardware-wise. It did get outdone by the Xbox. And yeah, it has all these exclusives, but like you said, we're already starting to hear there's a surprising amount of lack of news for games such as Kena Bridge of Spirits, which makes you kind of concerned and wonder if the same sort of things that are impacting like Xbox games and keeping them from coming into production is also going to happen to Sony as well. They've been kind of silent about it, so that's definitely a red flag in my opinion in the history of watching that sort of stuff happen. When you hear silence, that's typically something that should bother you a little bit, and especially if these claims that like COVID and stuff is really impacting game development as much as they say. I'm sure that Sony's not going to be free of facing those consequences as well, and they might be facing some delays anyway. Hardware-wise, of course, the PlayStation 5 does destroy something like the Nintendo Switch, But the market is speaking for itself, and at this moment, the Nintendo Switch is still the market leader. That's over Xbox. That's over PlayStation 5. That's over PC, of course. If you, I mean, you don't even count it as part of the console war or whatever. But the Nintendo Switch is winning. As to why, I mean, we could probably think of a couple of reasons, such as the vast shortage of the PlayStation 5 and the Xbox and stuff like that. Maybe the lack of exclusives. I don't know what it is. The Nintendo Switch is winning though. And so, it's just weird to see the market flip around so much. And for some reason, once a force becomes dominant, or once one of the companies become dominant, none of them have been able to seem to secure their position as top dog, which is weird to me. Like, it seems like it's almost taking turns just bouncing between all of them, and that's just something that's so funny to me. Hopefully Nintendo's gonna take advantage of this wave and try to do something with it, but I don't know. Nintendo's Nintendo, and they're kind of always just stuck in their ways, and they do their own thing. I know that a lot of people were pretty angry at them because at the Nintendo Direct they didn't mention anything for Breath of the Wild 2, and they already issued a public apology over that. But I don't know, we'll see what they do. I think if none of these companies ever, take advantage of when they're in the limelight and they're top dog, and they do something to establish and hold themselves in that position and assert dominance, they're just going to keep fluctuating back and forth until PC has the majority of shares, which is going to happen. I predict it's going to happen anywhere between 5 to 10 years. Consoles are going to be mostly irrelevant, and PC is going to be top dog.
Well, again, that speaks to what I'm saying. It elevates itself as a business. The one that's furthest away from cloud services and all these things is Nintendo, to be honest with you. Assuming that PC takes over and consoles just kind of start fading away, Sony did the whole PlayStation Worldwide Studios logo to Umbrella Corp its entire thing and bought a piece or a chunk of Epic Games so they could start releasing their games to the Epic Games Store, such as Horizon and Death Stranding and all that stuff, and really allowing their PlayStation exclusives to start slowly taking some presence in the PC world. Xbox went all out, and they did the Xbox Game Pass, and you can play on your PC same way as a browser on your phone and everything. And they're doing the whole Cloud X thing, or xCloud thing, right? So towards the future, as you start saying, yeah, PC becomes the best, but that doesn't mean the platforms disappear. They just evolve to the PC era, right? That's why I don't consider, or why people shouldn't really consider PC as part of the console world, because it's not something that gets sold. It's something that coincides as part of the ecosystem, right? It's just part of the nature. It's just these things are within its world, trying to fight to get its own interest.
Well, I don't count it as part of the console wars. One thing you do have to consider is that when people start playing on PC, many times they are pulled away from consoles. The only thing that could keep people who play on PC coming back to console is maybe if they say they have a cheaper PC that can't necessarily run something that optimally, maybe, and then maybe the game does run well on console or whatever, so it's good enough for you to play on console. That's going to be a very small percentage of the cases. Most of the time, it's just that they want to play an exclusive. The thing is that obviously with what's going on right now, the exclusives aren't doing a damn thing for Xbox or for Sony. For some reason, Nintendo's top dog. The shortages of sure are a part of that. Scalpers, I'm sure, are a part of that. But even if you count scalper sales, it's still which is buying up the whole stock of it. Nintendo's still winning. So you have to ask yourself, are the Nintendo exclusives really being that interesting? Or is it maybe the novelty of the Nintendo Switch that's finally selling it? Maybe it took 2-3 years, but people are just like, oh wow, that's the Switch. I want to have the Switch too. I just want to be able to get my games and go take them on the go and play them high quality and stuff like that, because it sure is, to me, playing on a Switch sure as hell beats playing on your phone. And obviously, as what we were talking about in the conversation earlier, is those 30-40 years of established well-loved mascots maybe does the thing as well. And probably Smash Brothers being one of the top fighting games right now is probably helping it too, and the fact that they adopted the games as a service model for it so successfully, I think that's a game that can rival Destiny in its implementation of games as a service. And the fact that it's a fighting game is pretty insane. I think Smash Brothers is as close to perfect a game as you can get. The only thing that it really would need to fix is its netcode, for one, If it could fix his netcode, that would be phenomenal. And then if it actually had a stronger narrative, that would be pretty great. But I don't know, man. Nintendo's up, like, doing something. The market's weird right now. You'd have to really stand back and try to do some sort of a full analysis. But PlayStation, to me, it seems like PlayStation and Xbox are kind of in trouble.
No, I totally agree with you. But the real problem seems to be the shortage of AMD cards because, of course, both companies decided to go for the Navi card. And, between COVID, demand, supply not being there, it all affects everything, right? So, and I personally have a theory that Xbox literally doesn't care about consoles, that they're literally just doing it and working up a cost just to make sure that PlayStation doesn't have enough AMD cards to actually make PlayStation consoles. But if you really think about it, I mean, you could say they're on the losing end, but every time stock comes up, it's always sold out. Whether it's scalpers or not, they're still making the money, right? So they're still staying afloat and they're still trying. There's still avenues that are a benefit to the thing. I know that PlayStation Direct is trying to do its best to be fair to all customers so they all get a space in line. Best Buy introduced a virtual line system so that people can get in line, wait for their console and stuff, and not have to deal with botters. So these are all techniques that are coming out. But every time the PlayStation 5 comes up, it's pretty much sold out. The Xbox, people are saying it's in a similar spot, but not really. Like, it's not that hard to find an Xbox versus a PlayStation. The PlayStation is like non-existent. You go anywhere, it's always sold out. So I know they are making money. But again, this thing happens at the beginning of any console generation. The first year, the consoles don't really do well. Nintendo Switch didn't do that well when it first came out. It started doing well when Mario, Zelda, and all these other games started coming out, right? Same thing for PlayStation 4. Call of Duty wasn't a PS4 seller. The PS4 seller, I think, came out the following year. I know Infamous came out, and that was all right in February, but it wasn't that. It was like when all the new games started coming out the following year, and then everything started being a little bit more exclusive to the next generation. Same thing for Xbox. Xbox didn't really have a start because they started off with a 900p console that was just like, what the F, dude? Like, you can't even do 1080p. They didn't really come out off the top until Halo 5 came out. That's when people started buying that, and then, of course, the Xbox One X. So, and despite the fact that I know you're saying that the Xbox is better technically on paper because of the parts, that hasn't even been the case either. Majority of the crossplay games, which are supposedly going to be better on Xbox, have actually been doing better on Sony. Whereas Xbox might have higher resolution here and there, Sony's been having consistent FPS with no drops whatsoever, whereas other games are dropping to 50s and 40s. Which makes no sense because it's a more powerful console, right? Whatever Sony did is making their games run at a solid 60 for a majority of the game, probably with like a couple frame drops here to 58, 56, while Xbox is dropping to 40 for no apparent reason, despite the fact that it's a harder console. So each console, as you said, they all have their unique thing. Nintendo has their franchises, Sony has their unique programming style, and Xbox has money, right?
Well, like I said, if we're talking about the console wars, I think that PlayStation 5 is in an unsure position right now. As far as it being harder to find, I don't know if it's necessarily because it's more popular, because I know that Xbox has a share of fanboys that, won't let it go no matter what. And then also the fact that, they are secure. It seems like they're positioning themselves to have a lot more exclusives. That's pretty threatening to PlayStation. Because the other thing you have to be honest about too is that PlayStation 4 didn't just win off the back of having a bunch of exclusives. That would be a lie for you to say that that's the case. You also have to consider
I didn't say it was exclusives that took them off. It was the fact that all the games started coming out next gen only. Because I don't even think they had a big hit until 2015, like 2 years after, with Horizon. So I'm not saying it was the exclusives.
Well, but PS4 arguably won the console war for the last generation. That's also partly due to the fact that I think it did have better hardware than the Xbox One. It had more exclusives, and that helped too. But also, Xbox had a nightmarish, hellish damage done to its PR for all the stupidity they tried to pull off at the beginning of that generation as well. So you have to factor that as well. That's the thing about these conversations. It's just there's so many things to factor that it's hard to get right. What if for whatever reason Nintendo really just is being the top dog right now, and I can't tell you what it is. I can't tell you what it is.
Oh. It's pretty fair that they're the top dog. They had a decent console. I mean, it's not the greatest thing ever, but it's pretty decent. They have Smash, which is blowing it out of the water. They're starting to get titles too that are pretty decent. They have Witcher 3 when you stream it in and this and that, which again, you can play on the go, which is appealing. Like, wow, Witcher on the go, Doom on the go. Like, that's amazing, right? these are all things that are benefiting the console, and now it's like you can actually consider buying the console because it has actual relevant games. Before, they didn't really have it. They, as a matter of fact, it's known that they completely disregarded and did not care about third-party games, but now they are actually starting to slowly support these games, and companies are taking the time to develop for them. Whether it's a hit or miss, that hasn't yet to be, known from those companies, but they are providing something, and I totally agree with you. They are making money, but again, it's the beginning year for any console is always going to be slow. What I wanted to point out is what you said too. The only reason a PC player would play a console is for two reasons. One, they have a cheap PC and they just want to play high graphic games, and it's easier for them to buy a PS5 than buy a brand new $1,500 graphics card, or to play the exclusives. Which again goes back to my original argument as to why I think PlayStation is going to win the console wars again, is because they're starting to release with 5 exclusives. Yeah, sure, maybe one of them or 2 of them are going to be messed up this year. Most likely. It happens in development, right? But then they're releasing with 5, and their mentality is push, push, push. So what's to say they're not going to have another 5 next year, which already Gran Turismo next year, which we know of. And then there's a couple more that they talked about. Final Fantasy 16, another big blowout. What if Final Fantasy Part 2 comes out next year? Right? And then for the following year after that, we don't know what's coming out. It could be Ghost of Tsushima 2. The next Naughty Dog game. What about the fact that Santa Monica is now making another game that's not God of War related, a completely new IP that's also looking to come out in 2024,
Well, here's the thing though, with Nintendo taking so much of the market share right now, and the economy possibly heading to be into a pretty scary place if we don't start seeing a recovery sometime soon. I don't know if the PS5 okay, obviously right now they're facing too many issues. They're not able to get their hands on the AMD cards. We're looking at possible delays for all these games. Nothing confirmed yet, but with everything that's been going on with game development, I wouldn't say that they're out of the waters in terms of like not having any delays. Let's say there could be possible delays. They're having a shortage of these AMD cards. Anytime PS5s hit the shelves, they're immediately still bought by scalpers. And it's already been months since like the console first released, and scalpers aren't giving it up. I guess it's kind of like the same situation as the short squeeze with GameStonk and all that, where it's just like they're holding the line, buying more and more, so you're forced to go to them. There's so many things they have to get under control first for them to get in position to start selling, and there's the unsurety of the market in the terms of like maybe people that bought Switches now aren't going to buy 5s, right? Maybe this was that purchase for the kid who wanted something for Christmas. They couldn't get their hands on a PlayStation. They certainly as hell weren't going to pay $1,000 for it. So here you go, son. You got a Switch. You're a Nintendo gamer now. Enjoy, And that's just going to be it for a lot of people, I think. And maybe people are still going to continue to lose their jobs, or they're going to continue to not get any jobs, and they're not going to spend their money on a PlayStation 5. Maybe they're waiting on the Stimmy check. Maybe the Stimmy check doesn't come in time. You know what I mean? But with all these factors, I'd say you'd I don't know. I don't feel comfortable calling it for PlayStation 5. I feel like it's still up in the air. Market share for PC is growing. Nintendo's top dog now with the console that feels like, obviously like hardware wise it's like 2 gens old, but they got something right. And also, not to mention the real I guess ace up the sleeve here is what the future of the studios that are being purchased by Microsoft is going to be, because what was it? The next Elder Scrolls game is set to come out, I think, if not this year, next year. And if that's an exclusive,
it's a bit further off.
Confirmed?
Yeah, it's a bit further off because they have Starfield right now that they're working on, and it's already being considered for 2022. And then they have that one, but it's gonna take a bit longer. They usually take 4 years between games to.
Oh, it's been a long time since this has been in development. I don't know. I heard it's confirmed 2022, which factors into it. And if people are aware, people are waiting for this game. People are waiting for this game. Like, people are waiting for the next Elder Scrolls, trust me. Because I remember when Skyrim came out, literally, like, the world's, like, divided in 2. I remember that was, like, the big thing that year, that people were just like, So I'm willing to wager that the same thing is going to happen for the next Elder Scrolls game. If people are fully aware that Elder Scrolls is an exclusive, which we don't know anything yet, if it's going to end up being exclusive for Xbox, I'm willing to bet that people will hold off and just get an Xbox for the sake of of playing Elder Scrolls because it's that big of a deal. So there's too many factors. Like I just don't feel comfortable calling it. You know, think about it. A lot of the games that we talked about here are interesting. Like Returnal is an interesting game. It's not a Skyrim. It's not an Elder Scrolls. You know, like that's let's just be fair with that too.
No, of course I agree with you. I know where you're coming from, but again, okay, let's start with let's do it on the market route real quick. If the market goes to shit, the only L that's gonna happen is Nintendo because they still don't have cloud services. Xbox can be like, oh, I don't care, just pay me $5 on PC and you get to do whatever you want. Same thing for Sony. They just go through the Epic Game Store and then you got your games on PC. What happens to Nintendo? They're boned because they're the only ones that have been separated from everything else, right? So I mean, you could say yeah, market because they have the Switch or whatever. It's gonna keep them winning. But again, if no one's buying, they're gonna pay for the cheapest service, and that's gonna be Game Pass and whatever Sony puts out on PC.
Well, but what I mean is the fact that people already have their consoles. You know, I'm not saying that the market's so bad that you can't afford to buy video games per se, or you can't afford to buy an online service because in that case, you know, maybe PS4 and Xbox One will still keep them afloat because, you know, but you know, if the majority of consoles being sold are Nintendo, that's putting a lot more people into your ecosystem, and it's a lot easier to buy a game for a console you already own than to save up for another console, especially if the economy gets worse. So that's a possibility you have to look at as well. Like if I mean, this is just purely speculation. Like we have no way to really know what's going to happen. Maybe tomorrow we wake up and everything's all done, the economy's back to normal, everything ends up recovering, and now people have money to buy all 3 consoles. Hip hip hooray, PS5's the winner, yay. But we don't know what's going to happen. So I'm saying that there's so much uncertainty available that for me, the possibility of PlayStation 5 being the winner, I don't know. It doesn't seem like it's going to happen. Like I thought that PlayStation 5 was poised to be the winner from the get-go, like originally, but like it's just weird. Like what, the Switch comes out of nowhere and just they're dominating. Like, you know, like what I mean. Like it's just weird. Like I don't know. It's always seemed to just be up in the air. Like it's unpredictable at this point. You know what I mean?
It's what I keep telling you. It's about having the IPs to support it, right? So like I said, Nintendo didn't really start with anything, and I'm sure a lot of people who are listening and people who know about this stuff will share the same sentiment as what I'm about to say. I actually want to Switch. I'm just holding out for more games. When the Switch came out, I thought it was unique. It was interesting. I thought it was something that was like, wow, I should have this because it's on the go gaming. But again, I was like, I'm gonna wait because I want to see more games come out. The fact that, you know, me as a fan who from the outside, as an outsider, has been waiting forever, having Skyward Sword HD come back, despite the fact they didn't do really much except for changing the resolution and making it work on Switch, is good to me because I've never played the game, so I can buy it. I know the fans kind of feel all suckish. You're like, dang, you're making us pay full price for a game that we had, and you're not making much of a change other than HDing it, right? I can understand that. And this is what I've been waiting for. I've been waiting for Skyward Sword to come out. I'm still waiting for Ocarina, Majora's Mask, Wind Waker, all these games to come in so I can finally go, dang, now I finally have a Zelda console. I don't even call it a Nintendo console. I call it the Zelda console because all I really care about is Zelda. And all I'm waiting for is for Zelda games to come out so I can be like, dang, I have my Zelda console now, right? But looking at it again, yeah, you're right. I agree with you that Skyrim was explosive, but let's look at their track record. Okay, Skyrim was great. Then they copied it for Fallout 4. It started, falling and going into a negative route for them. They tried to copy it again and saying it just works. The famous quotes from Todd Howard with Fallout 76, and they screwed up hard. And then they haven't done anything since. Sure, they've been programming, but again, you got to look at the timetable. They got to take their time with Starfield first to make sure it doesn't fall into the same problem that Fallout 4 and 76 had. And then they have to do the same thing for Skyrim. Not for Skyrim, for Elder Scrolls 6. I'm telling you, it's not going to... I'm foretelling now that game's not going to come out next year. It's going to come out 2023, 2024. Unless Microsoft somehow gives them enough money and they build up enough of a team with skilled programmers to pull it off. Because again... You know, Skyrim has been known for becoming a glitchy mess, and so was Fallout 4, and 76 was abysmal. So with this track record, I'm technically already like cautiously optimistic about Elder Scrolls because at least I know that their bread and butter has always been on Elder Scrolls. I'm hoping that it ends up being pretty good. But again, what's stopping people from just paying $5, $10, $15 for a Game Pass, playing the game, and then jumping right back to their favorite console or PC game, right? And that's what I think is going to be the difficulty with why I think Xbox is not really going to win anything. They're just going to stay in this in this like general area where they'll always keep winning. They'll never actually lose, but they'll never be the winner because of that.
Well, I'm not. No one's saying that they have to win, but if Nintendo's ahead, PC continually takes more and more market share, then Xbox also takes away from Sony where it's like close enough or whatever. I'm saying, what if it's a weird reality where like the best console of the generation is like kind of an antiquated one? You know what I mean? Like I see a lot of difficulties in the road for PlayStation as it is right now. The fact that it's easier to get your hands on an Xbox, to me, which was something we haven't even discussed, you just kind of brought up in passing that it's easier to get your hands on an Xbox right now. That doesn't bode well for PlayStation. Like, yeah, maybe you kind of see it as like the secondary byproduct that no one really wants or whatever. But if you get desperate enough, that Xbox starts looking pretty good, man. Because I could tell you playing Cyberpunk on this, that didn't cut it, bro. Like I would have been ready to like dish out the money for something else at that point. You know what I mean?
Well, yeah, no, okay, but you're talking about the PS4, and again, if you compare Cyberpunk on both Xbox One or Xbox Series X and PS5, it runs better on PS5 with a solid 60 FPS versus Xbox, which is dropping frames.
What can I get my hands on? I could get my hand on the Xbox Series X, not on the PS4.
And I agree. I agree with you. 100% agree with you. And as a matter of fact, I'm gonna be honest. I could be the biggest Sony fanboy ever. I'm not gonna troll anybody on Twitter because I'm not gonna be hypocritical about it. I want an Xbox this time around. Last time I didn't want the Xbox. I thought the whole starting off with the camera thing and all that stuff was just kind of baloney. And the fact that it couldn't even do 1080p was just like, I don't want this. Or it could, but like barely. I was like, I don't want this. But now it's like, dang, Halo is starting. I mean, Halo they may have presented it poorly, but if they fix this could actually be pretty cool. I'm looking at the fact that they have Bethesda. I don't have a good PC. It's cheaper to just get an Xbox and get Game Pass through there. All I have to do is just pay a monthly subscription and get all their games. You know, it's starting to feel like, dang, maybe I should consider buying an Xbox and just have both consoles enjoy both worlds. I mean, why not, right? Both worlds, best of both worlds, right? You want to have the most bang for your buck. I know many people who have Netflix and Hulu at the same time because they just want to watch everything, right? I do too. But when it comes to PlayStation, again, I understand where you're coming from. But again, I think it's just a situation for this year. And as time goes on, like obviously Sony already, like they didn't drop the manufacturing of the PS4, but they dropped a lot of the models. They're focusing on only one type of PS4 model to get that out there, and they're trying to really double down or triple down on the manufacturing of PS5. So eventually we'll start seeing that come up. Obviously it takes time. They started this in January. It's going to take some time for them to get to learn the training and all that and get to the manufacturing, and then maybe by June we'll start seeing, hey, look, stock is coming up for Christmas again.
Don't you think that's kind of a weird situation? Has there even been a situation like this for consoles where it's kind of like, yeah, buy a new product, but we're still gonna make the old one, and we're working on the new one, but we can't get it to you yet. And if we do get it to you, maybe it'll get sold out again to a bunch of degenerates.
No, this has always been a thing. I mean, when the PS2 continued selling when the PS3 came out for about 2 or 3 years, the PS3 kept selling until like 2016. Yeah. You know?
Yeah, but it's like I'm saying, I don't know. I feel like I don't recall there ever being such a rocky like console launch, dude. Like I don't remember it being this rocky. Like you're bringing up all these things with the PS4 and stuff, but I remember the PS4 selling fairly like well and people buying it, and like I don't think there was as much hype for it as the PlayStation 5.
Well, yeah, but there wasn't also COVID and people weren't forced to online retail where botters can just program everything. Everything was done through the stores. Right? You can just go to the store and buy something, whereas now they had to put everything online because of COVID. You can't just make lines and risk, all that stuff. And I hate to talk about the thing because the pandemic, right? Because it's sad. It's just touchy. But my point is, they never had this, so of course it's all new to everyone. They have to deal with this, and going through online stores. Like I know a friend in Germany who like created like 6 bots, and he checks like all their best retail stores like constantly. I mean, he for whatever it is, he can't click fast enough to get the console on time, but he has the bots that notify him when it's available and stuff, and set up the checkout. And that's just, I mean, it's just telling of the different situation. Like now you don't even have to go to a store and buy it. You want a PS5, just program a bot to buy it for you and go to sleep. You don't even have to actually try.
The other thing I was going to tell you is that it's a little, I mean, one of the biggest places that you have to sell your PlayStation 5 in the United States, right? Like you have to get the United States to win, in my opinion. UK is at least doing something about the scalpers, bro. I haven't heard anything about the United States doing that either. As far as we know, if these people continue, quote unquote, holding the line on the PlayStation 5, that could bode pretty badly for them, dude.
I mean, I just told you, and you're actually wrong on that. It's actually the U.S. is employing a lot more things with at least the businesses. It's the U.K. is going downhill because the U.K. is literally having truck manifests hacked into, and the PS5s are being sold before they're even available on the stores publicly. Like the websites have been hacked, so like they buy all the inventory before it actually like the button pops up on the websites. In the U.S., we're having Best Buy with doing the virtual online thing. We have PlayStation Direct, which is doing the virtual online thing and the reservations and letting people take their time. Walmart doesn't care because Walmart's just we don't care. Amazon started doing like a similar thing where it's like you got to take your time with your account. So a lot of the companies are starting to do things where it's like you have to wait in line, and it's trying to make it fair for everyone. What I think needs to happen is something that they explained to me about TV price protection in Best Buy with the consoles, where you can't actively buy a TV. I mean, I think you can buy it and sell it higher on eBay or something, but you can't actively as a company. Like Best Buy can't just buy a TV that Vizio says is $1,000 and then sell it at $1,500. They have to sell it at the same price as Vizio, and it has to be the same in BJ's and Costco, everywhere. The price has to be the same. It's price protected. So what they should do is they should do a price protection on consoles so that even if scalpers do buy the console, they would have to set it at $500. Otherwise, it's illegal to sell it. And then that way, it's just price protected. It doesn't hurt the market. It doesn't take away any freedom of selling in the market or whatever. But it at least regulates it in a way that's just fair to everyone. It's just consumer rights, consumer protection, right? Just make a thing that we're all consoles the same price, and that's it. You can't sell it higher. And then scalpers are going to be like, oh, we can't sell this higher, so we're not going to buy it. And it just puts it right back in the pool. Now, as far as what you're saying, it's interesting because it's never happened before. It's going based off the fact that it's pandemic and people have to buy online and all that. But the fact that they stopped manufacturing on all the consoles is something that's new, because that was never really that important before. Before they just kept making PS3 Slim, PS3 Fat, and PS3 Very Slim alongside the PS4. Now it's like they have two PS4s, which has never happened before. Consoles didn't used to launch with two versions. Now they have the digital and the disc. So they have to build two different PS5s plus meet the band, which is way more than the PS4 ever had and the Xbox. And then on top of that, the fact that they have to drop the three different models of the PS4, they have to figure out which ones they want to keep. That's what I find interesting.
Oh yeah, man. These are not only unprecedented times for like just humanity in general because of everything that's been going on. Okay, let me just put it like this. If it's unprecedented for us in our daily lives, you can sure as hell bet that it's going to be unprecedented for Sony and stuff in terms of like selling and everything as well. I think my explanation for it's adequate enough. I'm not saying that PS5 can't win, but I'm saying that their win isn't as assured as you seem to think it is. That's my final opinion on that, and I don't think I have anything more to say about it either.
No, I agree. I agree with what you're trying to say. I mean, at the end of the day, Sony. It's not like Sony has a Skyrim or something that's like it just blew it out of the water. I mean, if one day Sony decides to buy Take-Two. Yeah, but it's not as massive as Skyrim because Skyrim is multi-platform, right? It's even on your refrigerators, for Pete's sake. I even see the dude put it on like a freaking Tamagotchi watch or whatever. Like there's people that do crazy stuff. But what I'm trying to say is, sure, there isn't like a massive Skyrim thing, but there's God of War, there's The Last of Us, there's Ghost of Tsushima, and all these games. They're all hits, so people know that at least they're safe to get a good game on the console. If they keep doing that constantly, like every year blowing it out of the water, I mean, that's impossible. But if they do it somehow, that'll be the win.
Well, actually, thank you for giving me up another talking point. Here's something else that you should consider in terms of like market share and stuff too. Indie games are having it big, man. Indie games are having it big. I don't know if you've been keeping up with Valheim and what's happening there. It was a game made between 5 people, millions of sales within a week.
No, I agree, but it goes back to what I'm trying to say, and the reason why PS4 took it off. They supported indie. They're still supporting indie. Housemarque, Returnal was an indie company. They supported them, gave them more money, and grew it into a company of their own. They're doing the same thing with indie games. There's like 5 in their E3 show. There was like 4 or 5 indie games. Xbox had like 10 or 12, but I know they don't care as much as Sony has. Sony actually put in indie games in their showcase that are actually look unique and high end because they're giving them money. They even did the China initiative, which I keep parading around to everyone that everyone keeps forgetting. The reason why Sony doesn't have money is because they literally started making the market in China because they want to keep expanding to everyone. And they just built like 10 different indie companies. They're supporting indie.
No, I get that, but I'm saying, like, I don't know, like, for some reason, particularly the indie market in, like, PC, like, on Steam and stuff, has just really been blowing up. Like, at least last year, it just went wild, you know what I mean? Like, you had Among Us, you had Phasmophobia, you have Valheim this year already starting off this early, breaking, like, the universe. Like, I don't know, man, that's something else to consider. You know, people were playing Rust like crazy. Which I think is a PC exclusive, if you can even call it that. You know, it's something you can only play on PC. You don't play it on consoles. That's something to look at, bro. If PC games continue to be popular, that's something that's gonna have a big impact on consoles. You know, Rust is something that a lot of people have been playing. Valorant is something that a lot of people have been playing. So that's something. I think it'd be best if we wrap up the podcast here because I have human necessities to attend to, and I think we're pretty much done. Why don't you go ahead and take this intro for yourself on this one time?
Okay. Well, thank you guys for joining us on the Co-Op Syndicate this week. I know we're cutting it just a couple minutes early, but we pretty much covered all the main talking points. And of course, there's going to be an ongoing conversation that's going to happen between now and the end of the year. We're going to see all these amazing games coming up soon. So, real quick, I've never done the outro before myself, but I'm going to try and give it a shot. Go ahead and follow us if you'd like to see more of us from any of our social media accounts. We have the Co-Op Syndicate on Instagram, at Co-Op Syndicate. Same thing for Facebook, as well as, I believe, Twitter. You can speak to us more directly there, share some of your ideas. We also have a Discord, which we'll be linking down below in the description. So you can join us and try to help us build our community of people who are like-minded and like to talk about all these things in the video game industry. If you'd like to support us more directly, we do have a Patreon called patreon.com/Co-Op Syndicate, where we have little tiers for followers, such as we offer shirts, coupons for games, and it also helps us be a little bit more interactive with you guys with movie nights and a bunch of other nice things. If you did like the show today, go ahead and follow us here by subscribing, supporting us by clicking that bell button and keeping up with us with any time we go live, as well as really share it with other people. I would like to see what you guys think and really generate conversation about what we talk about. At the end of the day, this podcast is best when people are interacting with us, which you'll see in some of our previous episodes. So go ahead and hit that share button, share it with other people and wherever you want, Twitter, Facebook, wherever you see, please. And of course, like and comment so we know a bit more directly about what you like and dislike about the show. And lastly, of course, we are on Buzzsprout, so consider following us on the co-opsyndicate.buzzsprout.com, where we have all our podcast episodes in audio format. So if you'd like to hear us in the gym or somewhere else more without the video, you can download our personal episodes and just watch them on your phone or hear them on your phone. Lastly, of course, I hope you guys have a wonderful day. This was a fun show, and we hope to see you again next week. Have a wonderful rest of the weekend.
Yeah, guys. Also, let us know in the comments if you're watching on YouTube if you prefer the Michael outro or the Jordan outro. Let us know officially. Hashtag Team Michael, hashtag Team Jordan. Just let us know. Peace.